This is a Leica, this is a Fujifilm, and this is a Sony. In this video, I will be comparing those three systems. Now, long-time viewers of the channel would remember I used to use Fujifilm for many years, and then about 16 months ago, I've started using other brands, specifically Sony as my primary system, but also Leica. And throughout this period of time, I have been playing with the Fuji, with the Sony, with the Leica, and even though, let's say, 70% of my photography has been on the Sony, I've used the systems enough to be able to give you a very high level opinion on which one might be best for you. This is an opinion, this is not fact, this is not objective information, because what you like will be different to what I like. How I see the world and how I see photography will be different to you. So by all means, listen to this video, take any information that you think applies to you and remove all the rest that doesn't. When comparing these cameras, it's important to understand that you can't just go and compare a Sony A1 with a Fujifilm X-T30, for example, because two very different systems. So I've tried to keep this comparison close. And when I refer to Sony, Fuji, Leica throughout this video, I'm specifically referring to these cameras. So the Sony is the A7CR. It's actually got the little Minolta 40mm vintage lens on it. That's actually for the next or the video after, but separate topic. This is a very small, it's not pocketable, but it's a very small camera that's incredibly capable, and I am starting to use this a lot more than the bigger A7R5 that's filming me right now. The Leica is the Q343 and the Fuji is the X100VI. The reason I've picked these specific cameras is because they kind of sit in the same category of a small kind of top of the range system within that, let's say, brand. I hope that makes sense. So obviously a disclaimer, as with all gear videos, I am not owned or paid for by any of these companies. All these cameras I've purchased with my own money. Therefore, all opinions that I share are my own without any filtering to keep a marketing manager happy somewhere. So rest assured that you're getting transparent information, let's just say that. All three cameras have been surprisingly reliable. I have not had any major issues apart from the odd freeze up where I had to take the battery out and put it back in. Maybe the odd glitch here and there, but I can't say one brand was noticeably worse than the other. Each brand had its fair share of reliability issues, but I'm talking about 1 or 2 cases a year. This really isn't something that's worth mentioning, but I thought I'll mention it anyway. I wouldn't look at any of these as more or less reliable than the other. Now let's talk about the build quality, and the Leica wins this one hands down. It's by far the most solid, high quality, premium feeling camera of them all. I would say the only camera that comes close to this is a Hasselblad in terms of build quality, fit and finish. This really feels like a high quality product in your hands. The Fuji and the Sony feel like consumer goods that you will use and replace in 5 years time, whereas this feels like something that you will keep for 10+ years, passed down to your kids, whatever. But you also have to keep in mind this is what, £1,600, and this is what, like £5,000, £6,000. So when you're paying such a premium, you kind of expect it. It's not a surprise that it's well built. Moving to Sony versus Fuji, I would say they're about the same. The Sony does feel more durable. The Fuji obviously looks a little bit nicer and feels like it's got a bit more of a premium feel, but generally speaking, I would say the Sony is a better built camera, but it's not a huge difference. So the difference between the Fuji and the Sony isn't the same as the difference between like the Sony and the Leica. It's, you know, if you're looking at build quality, I wouldn't be kind of using that as a metric to pick one of these cameras. Obviously, Leica is a different ball game entirely. Now let's talk about weather sealing, and the Leica wins this one again. Even though all three cameras are weather sealed, the Leica is the only one that has an actual IP rating, means it was tested and certified to a particular level of weather sealing. So if you're going to be shooting in the rain a lot or by the sea in dusty, dirty environments, I would say the Leica is probably going to be the best bet if you want the most peace of mind when it comes to weather sealing. With that said, the Sony is the camera that I have used the most in insanely torrential thunderstorms, rain. In Vietnam, I stood under this giant dragon that just sprayed water everywhere. This camera had, like, I'm not joking, I opened the screen and there's just water running out. It really has stood up to that as well. I have not had any issues with the A7CR or the bigger A7R when it comes to weather sealing. The only issue I had is the hot shoe. Because it's a multi-interface hot shoe, sometimes if water gets in, it can cause the camera to think an incompatible accessory is attached, and you get annoying warning messages. They do not impact the camera and how it works, it's just really annoying. To get around it, I am using this specific thumb grip from SmallRig, which actually has a rubber gasket and it seals the camera. So that's one way to get around it. Fujifilm is not as rosy when it comes to weather sealing, even though the cameras are weather sealed. The X-T3, the X-T4, the X-T5 and the X-H2S have all gone back to Fujifilm with water ingress issues or various issues that happened after shooting for long periods of time in the rain. I think the XT line is a lot more susceptible to it because there's a lot of dials to try and keep weather sealed. The XH2 is definitely the more robust camera when it comes to weather sealing, at least in my experience. But I would say if I was planning on shooting a lot in heavy rain, I probably would think twice about the Fuji. Now let's talk about how these cameras make you feel and the general kind of like user feeling of using these cameras. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but stay with me. So I would say the Leica is a very premium experience. So if you like nice, expensive, heavy things which feel premium, if you're into your Rolex watches and all that kind of stuff and your 911s, then this fits right in. It's, yeah, very premium experience. Everything feels really solid. And when you use it, you very much feel like you're using a high-end product. With Sony, on the other hand, it's a technical experience. So this feels like you're using a very technical product akin to, I don't know, driving an electric car with all the tons of different features, I don't know. So if you're into that, then this is the feeling that you will get with the Sony, whereas with the Fuji, it's a very light-hearted approach to photography. This feels like the least or the lowest kind of barrier to entry between picking up a camera and going to shoot. It's kind of the sort of fun camera compared to the other two. One's serious and premium, one's serious and professional and technical, and the Fuji's like the light-hearted fun camera that you just pick up and go and shoot with. I hope that makes sense, because I'm trying to question if it makes sense in my head right now, I'm not sure. Now, I made a whole video about this topic, but there is this concept of a camera getting out of your way. So, the Leica, this camera, or I think the brand itself, is photography is as much about So I'll start again. With the Leica, using the Leica is just as much of the overall photography experience as shooting itself. So when you're out shooting, holding this camera, using this camera is part of the overall experience. Therefore, interacting with it is just as joyous to you, well, not to you, but in general, as getting good shots. The Sony, on the other hand, isn't. The Sony is designed to get out of your way and allow you to focus on the photography. So this might be a rather dull shooting experience in comparison to this, but this will get out of your way and allow you to get the photos, whereas this adds a bit of resistance in terms of how the camera operates between you and getting the shot. However, that resistance is what people love to use. Like, for instance, the manual focusing. I mean, this is an autofocus camera, but you get the idea. A good analogy is like the Leica is a manual V12 Aston Martin and the Sony is a Range Rover. The Aston Martin is what you'd pick if you want to go on a cruise on some mountain roads. You change the gears manually. It's a very raw experience, and the way you interact with that car is as important as the driving itself. Whereas the Sony, the Range Rover, it just gets you from A to B, gets you the result in the quickest way, in the easiest way, and the most kind of comfortable way. So the car just gets out of your way, so to speak, and just lets you get on with what you need to do. Is it boring? Perhaps, but it's just a very different way to look at it, to look at photography. So what I'm trying to say is that the Leica and the Fuji involve you in the process, and the Sony gets out of your way and allows you to focus on the photography itself. The next topic is ecosystem, and the Sony wins hands down because the Sony has the biggest and the best ecosystem of lenses and accessories. Not only does Sony offer like a ton of different lenses, probably the most out of all of these brands, but also their mount is open, meaning that you can buy a lens from almost any manufacturer for almost any price, which means that actually Sony is probably the more affordable option because you can get lenses that are very, very affordable. Fujifilm is definitely becoming more open. There's a lot of brands jumping on that. Leica, I'm not sure because I've never used their lens, interchangeable lens systems, so I can't really say on that. But also you have accessories like microphones. So you have a multi-interface hot shoe where you can plug accessories in without having to use any cables. So there is definitely a lot there. On top of that, Sony is kind of one of the gold standards in professional freelance photography world. So if you want cages, dive houses, and a bunch of various accessories, there's just a lot more of that out there for Sony than for the other brands. At least that's what I've experienced. Now let's look at color, which is going to be by far the most subjective part of this video, because what's a pleasing color science to me might not be to you. Some people love Fuji colors. However, for every Fuji color lover, there is someone who thinks they're ugly. Same with Leica, same with Sony. Also depends how you process your images, because if you edit a lot, then some brands are better than others. So let's start with this. Straight out the box, the Fuji has the best colors in my opinion. It's quite a substantial gap as well. They're soft, they're pleasant. It's just a very nice RAW or JPEG file to work with. If you don't like editing, if you like the Fuji look, then by far, in my opinion, it has the best color science. Leica has its own look. It's punchy, it's high contrast, it's quite sharp, it's quite clean. It's not my cup of tea, I'll be honest, so whenever I'm editing my Leica files, I am often undoing a bunch of that sharpness and a bunch of that Leica look to add my own kind of style onto it. The Sony is very boring, it's very neutral, it's very flat. The colors are rather ugly straight out of camera, but it serves as a great starting point for further editing. My leg has gone dead. Oh my god. Oh god. Okay. Oh my god, my leg, I can't feel it. How can people sit on the floor for so long and not get dead legs? Now let's talk about sharpness. Of course, sharpness is mostly determined by the lens and not the actual camera, but assuming we put a top of the range lens on each system, I would say the Sony and the Leica are equally as sharp, incredibly sharp, to the point where you really have to undo that sharpness because it's too much almost. The Fuji is a little softer, but I would say it's more pleasing. But again, it depends on what you want to do with your files. If you like to zoom in and see amazing sharpness, you might find the Sony and the Leica to be a bit better for you. Moving on to JPEGs, I would say the Fujifilm wins this one hands down. Again, the best JPEG straight out of camera colors, plus you have all the film simulations and you have a ton of different ways in which you can customize these JPEG profiles. If you don't like editing, if you want to get straight out of camera photos that you can share, you can send to your friends, or maybe just tweak a little bit, like the exposure, the Fuji is probably going to be the only real option for you, because the Leica, you can definitely get great JPEGs out of it. You have Leica Lux, which is these JPEG profiles that has been developed by Leica. They are great. You can definitely customize them, not as much as the Fuji. But again, if you like the Leica look, then the Leica JPEGs will be very, very good. The Sony, on the other hand, if you don't want to edit your files, then do not buy the Sony, because the JPEGs are ugly, the colors are not very nice, and they just feel so off in comparison to the other two cameras. Autofocus, this is an easy one. Sony wins hands down. There's no competition, no contest. If you rely on autofocus for your photography or for video, I would not even look at the Fuji or the Leica. Just go straight for Sony. That's all I can say. Video performance, same again. I would say if you want to take a video seriously, just go for the Sony. The S-Log profile is by far the most superior one that I've used. You have so much editing capability, the images look incredible. I can't really fault it. The Sony also has by far the best selection of video specific features, the best IBIS, it's just almost perfect for video work. The Fuji is still very, very good. You can get some amazing video out of it. Just go check out my mate Aaron. Aaron's videos are all filmed on Fuji and they look like they could be done with cinema cameras. So a lot of it is to do with skill. But I would say in terms of just straight out the box video features, the Sony wins this one. Fuji is good. Leica I just wouldn't bother with, because the L-Log profile, even though they've updated it and they've made it a bit more useful, it's still crap in comparison. And it's just not quite there in terms of video, at least at the moment. Alright, let's summarize this video, and I just want to say one thing before going into the summary itself, and that is, even though I've talked about these cameras and I've praised them on some things and I've criticized them for the others, overall these are outstanding cameras that can get you all the results, all the photos, all the videos that you want, and with the right skill set, with the right knowledge of the system, you can get those results. But just because, let's say, the Sony autofocus is so much better than the Leica, it doesn't mean you can't use the autofocus in the Leica. The autofocus in the Leica is very, very good, especially with the recent firmware update. So don't think me saying, okay, the Sony wipes the floor with the autofocus. is in any way meaning that the Fuji and the Leica are so bad that it's not worth buying them. That's definitely not the case. These are all good cameras, and I am just trying to share my thoughts if I compare them directly. But if you say to me, I want the X100 because I like how it looks, I like how the camera makes me feel, I want to pick it up, I want to put it on a coffee table, whatever, go for the Fuji because you will get an amazing camera. Same for Sony, same for Leica. So just, it doesn't matter. They're all great cameras, and in the right hands, they can all make amazing results, and that's all I can really say on that. But other than that, what can I say? Well, the Fuji is definitely the one that I would go for if you don't want to edit, if you want a camera that just looks really nice, it's really fun, very approachable. Maybe you're just getting into photography, maybe you love photography but you just don't want to have all the technicality of the Sony, and maybe you don't have the budget for the Leica, or you don't want something that expensive around your neck. I really think the X100VI is the best Fujifilm camera there is. I would pick this over the XT or the XH line any day of the week, even the XE camera that they've just released. This is the one to get, in my opinion. The Sony is what I would go for if you are a technical person, you really want to set up the camera to just be part of you, because the Sony, you can do that. You can set it up in so many different ways that you physically can't with the other two cameras. If you want to take maybe video a lot more seriously, the Sony is the clear winner. And I would generally say that if you want the most professional tool, the Sony is what I would recommend. And as for the Leica, well, this is a luxury item, in my opinion. It's very expensive, it's very premium, it's very luxurious, and definitely go for it if you have the disposable income. Definitely go for it if you love Leica as a brand and as a product, then you would be very happy with it. But don't think that by getting the Leica you will magically start taking better photos. That's just not true at all. As I've said, all of these cameras can take really good shots. Okay, that is it. Now my other leg has gone dead, so I'll probably have to cut the video here. Hope it looks alright. It should sound a bit better and look a bit better than the last one. For those of you who are new watching this, we've just moved into a new apartment here in London and very much still going through the decorating and sorting it out process. This will be like the second spare guest bedroom, hence this sofa bed, but also there's a bunch of shelving and desk and stuff for all my camera gear, which will be like the office bit. I might do a video on the second channel about all of this, I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate the support on the channel. I really appreciate the everyone who reads the blogs, watches, likes, comments, purchases any of my products. I really do appreciate it. That's it. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. At this point, I want to quickly thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I've been a paying customer way before they supported the channel, and have now been using their services for over 5 years. Squarespace is at the center of my online presence, and it's what drives my blog, portfolio, store, and newsletter. I appreciate the simplicity of managing everything from a single app because it saves me time and gives me peace of mind knowing that I can make changes or deal with issues from my phone. If you have a business, a side hustle, or simply want your own little corner of the internet to host your photography or build something big, Squarespace offers all the tools you need across all devices. If you want to learn more, get a free trial and then 10% off your first purchase, use the link in the description or enter code RomanFox at checkout. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring, and thank you for watching.